I get a lot of not deliverables.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this special committee meeting
Hello, how are you?
on the MDC government to order. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. It is 4:03. My name is Commissioner John Bozano, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make comments relative to the agenda items?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My name's Elizabeth Bratton. I'd like to comment if possible.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Elizabeth Bratton and I'm an MDC customer and homeowner in West Hartford. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to comment on agenda item number 6 regarding retroactive reimbursement for customer sewer repairs. As some of you are aware, I have attended many different MDC committee meetings.
Did you do that, John?
I did not. Miss Bryden, you accidentally got muted there a couple seconds ago.
I see that. Okay, I'll start again. Thank you. Okay. As some of you are aware, I have attended many MDC committee meetings for over a year now, and I continue to share my comments in an attempt to get reimbursed for an issue I had that began in January 2023. I had a sewage backup in my home that resulted in a bill for over $12,000 that I paid to replace a sewer pipe in the woods on someone else's property to which I had no access. In my case, the sewer lateral comes out down the back of my house, down a hill, off my property, behind my neighbor's house, into the woods on someone else's property, and that's where the portion of the pipe needed to be replaced. The lateral on my property was completely clear when it was checked by a camera when the backup occurred. This issue has been passed from committee to committee for a long time now, and I'm really hoping to get a positive resolution soon. I believe you already have the other full details about this issue in the minutes from previous meetings, so I won't repeat them all, but I am advocating to allow retroactive reimbursement as part of the Sewer House Connection Program. When the new sewer ordinances were approved in July 2023, they provided financial relief to homeowners who needed to make repairs to the sewer laterals on their property, but up until now, they have not addressed the issue of retroactive reimbursement for repairs that have already been made out of necessity. In my case, had the sewage backup in our house occurred just a few months later, it likely would have been covered. Given that the Sewer House Connection Program now provides homeowners with financial support for repairs to the lateral, I believe retroactive reimbursement for repairs should also be allowed for a reasonable time period prior to the implementation of the program. In addition, the Sewer House Connection Program, I believe, should also allow for the partial replacement of sewer laterals and not just full replacements if a partial replacement solves the problem, as it did in my case. In support of this, I'd also like to reference the Hartford Sewerage System Repair and Improvement Fund, which, as I understand it, allows homeowners who have been impacted by sewage on or after January 1, 2021 to apply for reimbursement. This program allows for reimbursement for some MDC customers, and in fairness, I believe the Sewer House Connection Program should as well. To summarize, given that there is precedence for the MDC paying for repairs to homeowner lateral, as well as precedent for retroactive reimbursement for homeowners affected by sewer issues, I'm again advocating that the ordinance be revised to allow for retroactive reimbursement for repairs under the Sewer House Connection Program, and that partial lateral replacements be covered and eligible for retroactive reimbursement as well. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts again today and hope you take them into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to make some comments regarding the agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on. Someone? Okay. No. Okay. Item number 3 is the approval of meeting minutes of April 1st, 2024, and the public hearing of June 11th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion for those.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4 is the consideration and potential action regarding revision of water ordinance, section W5E, meter setting. I'll turn that over to our clerk.
Yeah, this is John Myrtle. The purpose of this ordinance revision In a year or so ago, we had modified a separate water ordinance that had a reference to the location of the water meter as basically inside the wall, and to allow for the installation of meter pits outside on the property. We didn't realize that this ordinance W5E also clearly relates to the location of the meter. So this is kind of a housekeeping cleanup to make sure that the ordinances are consistent. There was a public hearing held for this ordinance on June 11th of this year. And if the government approves, it'll go to the board.
Any discussion on this item, questions? I'll entertain a motion to move this forward.
So moved. Second.
You, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5 is the consideration and potential action regarding new water ordinances, section W5K, lead and copper rural service line replacement. Mr. Clerk, if you don't mind, just a quick explanation of that.
Of course. This is John Myrtle. As Chairman Bizzano just mentioned, this is a proposed new ordinance. This issue was brought to the Water Bureau a few months prior. It's the purpose of the ordinance is to basically allow or authorize the MDC to perform replacement of water service lines that contain lead and copper. The EPA has a lead and copper rule, which we've discussed, as was first passed in 1991, and then it's gone through a few iterations and changes. And with the most recent revision, it basically requires or strengthens the requirements to remove lead and copper service lines. So the purpose of this ordinance is to have the MDC perform that work at the MDC's cost on private property for service lines that are found to be need replacement under the EPA's rule.
Thank you. Any discussion on this conversation? I'll entertain
Question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Curry. The third line down in this paragraph, it mentions downstream of lead pipes. And while I understand what downstream means, lead pipes are not a concern, but anything downstream of lead pipes is?
That language, I believe, mirrors the rule itself, but I see the point that you're getting at. It doesn't explicitly say the service itself.
You're not addressing the lead pipes themselves, just downstream of lead pipes. Not sure I get.
Well, I guess at the end of the second line, replace any existing water service pipe discovered to contain lead lining, or galvanized piping installed downstream of lead pipes.
Chris, you have something on that?
Yeah, I can.
Chris Levac, MDC. So what typically occurs on old water services, lead is actually very malleable, so it's flexible. So when they did this, they would refer to it as a gooseneck. So it's a portion of pipe that comes in and goes on, and it looks like a gooseneck. So it sort of has this almost like a P-trap look, upside down P-trap.
There we go.
So what the objective is that it allowed for deflection. So if you did like a solid, rigid galvanized or wrought iron, you would get water service leaks. So what they would do is put this lead gooseneck in. Now, the gooseneck is not considered a lead service, but if you had lead and then followed by galvanized, that actually creates a sort of a metal interaction, which then goes and passes on that lead containing and then makes that lead particles soluble in the water. So that's why it's a little bit confusing, because it's not technically considered a lead service because of the lead gooseneck, but it does allow it to transport those lead particles via that gooseneck that's there. So I know it's confusing, but that's the way it's just written in the lead and copper rule. Hopefully that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, is there a better way, if I might, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, Chris Stone, District Council, is there the issue I have with it isn't the galvanized piping reference, it's downstream of lead
Yeah,
pipes.
I
So is
think
it
it's
better-
the
is
way
there
the
better word-
commas are, like the way, I guess the grammar, how it's set up within the commas. So it's galvanized that's downstream of the lead pipe. So what the lead pipe is referring to is that lead gooseneck, and then the galvanized is downstream of that.
Should it be something like before or after the lead pipe, or is this a term of art that I'm trying to?
It makes sense to me. I know that's probably not helpful, but it does make sense to me.
Well, it helps me. I mean,
Against the rule, it does make sense to me.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm okay with the word downstream, but that's
Yeah.
clear, but the lead pipe is what threw me, so.
Yeah, it's just that lead gooseneck is
You're
the,
talking about
yeah.
a reaction with other metals as the water flows through, so I understand it. So, thank you.
thanks.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, you good? You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to move this forward.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Item number 6 is discussion regarding a potential ordinance for retroactive reimbursement of customer sewer repairs. This is an interesting topic because we're going to talk about an ordinance that doesn't exist, as I understand it, correct? Mr. Clerk?
Correct. This is John Myrtle. This concept, as Ms. Bryden had mentioned in her comments, arose from the changes that were made last July to the sewer ordinances and the sewer house connection program, which allowed the MDC to replace sewer connections at its cost rather than the property owners. Again, that had occurred in July of last year. In February of this year, the concept, based on Ms. Bryden's public comments and some commissioner requests, was placed on BPW's agenda in February. There was a discussion and a request was made for kind of some financials about if retroactive reimbursement was to be considered, what that could look like. And it was brought back to BPW in April of this year. And there was some more discussion and it was referred to the board. And at the May 6th board meeting, it was referred to government here. At this point, as Chairman Bazzano pointed out, you notice in your agenda package, there's no draft ordinance because the concept there's been discussion, but the concept of whether the board or BPW is in favor of contemplating retroactive reimbursement and if they are, what that would look like, what the criteria would be, that hasn't been decided yet. So it was referred to government from the board back in May. This is the first meeting we've had. So it's open for discussion about whether this committee wants to craft something or if BPW would be a better body for it or the full board. But that's kind of the process it's gone through to get here.
The last thing I want to see is to keep going back and forth to different committees. I'd like to get this thing done as quickly as possible because I think it's important. Would it be possible for staff to, we're kind of just throwing it out there to you because there's really no concept at this point. Mm-hmm. So would it be possible for staff to draft a potential ordinance and bring it back to this body as soon as possible? Again, we're kind of giving you nothing. I
get it. Well, I think, Chris Stone, District Council, I think there's been enough discussion generally within various committees, as John pointed out, on the issue. Certainly we can review the minutes of those meetings, listen to the tapes. I think, as John pointed out, certainly he and others in my office probably have a pretty good understanding as to where, not necessarily just what the ordinance could look like, let me put it that way. And I don't want anyone to, so if we're directed by this committee to prepare an ordinance to bring it back to this committee for consideration, we can certainly do that. Voting to have us draft something does not necessarily mean that you support either the ordinance that we draft, nor more importantly, support the issue generally. You're not taking a stand on the issue. You want something to look at,
Yeah,
to consider
we need
before
something.
you go forward. I think that's what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Chairman,
That is.
and we'd be more than happy to do that. And it won't take forever to get that done.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Thank you. Agree completely with you. You know, there's some language that I think could be included, like, you know, only permitted work and only work that's been inspected and approved. But without the numbers, I mean, I don't think I want to see a proposal from council that says, okay, an X date back. I would rather have some blank language and then have Bob provide us with various numbers going back 3 months, 6 months, and we're going to have to find at some point, somebody's going to be on the wrong side of that cutoff. So, but we have to find a cutoff that we feel is reasonable, comfortable, and fair, and then just draw the line.
any other conversations or discussion on this issue? Yes, Commissioner.
Right, Commissioner Abedian, I agree with Commissioner Curry. I mean, it's, you know, do we go back 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, a year and a half? I mean, I think that's, nobody's willing to kind of take that stand. Maybe we should pick a number based on what we think would be fair, not from a money standpoint, but from a reasonable time period, because we can't go back 10 years. I mean, that would be crazy. So if we said, yeah, we're going to go back 2 years, that would kind of give us, or year, whatever it is, give us a valid number, and then either work forwards or backwards from there. You know, because you've got, and I feel bad at January 2023. So, you know, if it's a year, somebody misses out. If it's 2 years, as you said, and whether it's going to be a full, I have an issue with a full or partial. I think, as I think I heard Scott say, better to do it full, get it done, so we don't have to go back again. I wouldn't vote for a partial. I would want to have, if it's going to do it, let's do the whole thing, not just partial. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Gardo. This is calendar time and also dollars, and I don't know, I didn't hear everything you said, John, because you're turned the other way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. What is the average, because you talked about full or something, I don't, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Full length of the lateral or a partial repair replacement of the lateral. I think that's what's.
Is that,
Yes, and that was brought up
That's
by.
right.
okay, so,
Biden.
thank you. In the past, has this work to fix laterals been done by MDC staff, or is it done by sewer guys, you know, plumbers or whatever? Who's paid, you know, who's been paid for this previously?
Dave Ruddy.
Hi, Dave Ruddy, Director of Operations. Through the ordinances, the people qualified to work on laterals are bonded, licensed, and insured. Prior to this ordinance change, they were financed by the property owners.
Thank you. A follow-up to that is, what is do we have information on what that average or typical cost or what have you for work in the last 3, 4, 5 years has been to do that? There's a, I'm looking at the algebra, you know, of what makes sense, okay? Because when Commissioner Abedian was talking about, you know, the whole thing or whatever, you know, there's the cost of this and going retroactive. I'm in favor of this, and the customer from West Hartford that seems like an extreme amount, okay? I don't know what it would be and it was on someone else's property, okay, which is unusual. And, but if we can have some numbers as to what the typical item is or amount is, and if this was in the woods and not on this customer's property, there needs to be some decision trees that are made. It can get complicated, all right, but it wasn't like she parked her RV on it and broke the lateral or something like that. It was someone else's property. And I don't know how many laterals go through other folks' properties, all right? If it was someone else's tree, okay, that makes it someone else's problem, but it's not their lateral, but it might have been their tree, all right? I know I had problems with a tree, and it was a town tree, and when it fell down and took down the power lines, the town took it away, and I have no problems with my lateral anymore, okay? So if these kinds of considerations can be looked at by staff, it can get messy, with lots of decision trees. It's best to be simple, okay? But and this is an extreme case, all right? And I don't think that it was on someone else's property. She had no idea. We got to think of these types of part of the calculus. Thank you.
Yes.
I tend to agree with a lot of what's been said. My first question is, can someone tell us the date we began the lateral replacement program?
It was
August 1.
July of last year.
August 1, 2023 was the effective date of the ordinance.
August 1st of 23?
Yeah.
So that would be the date, not today. So if we went back to, in this case, January 23, that's only 8 months back. It's not a year plus, because that would be the go back date. I would much prefer that we start with a basic ordinance, keep it simple with the full replacement laterals. And if we can get something and figure out what the cost will be going back certain timelines, what we can afford and what's fair, then we can look at these anomalies. And maybe at that point, if we're in favor of looking at anomalies, we could include that and deal with them on a case-by-case basis and maybe set some parameters. For example, and I think our limit was $10,000. So this woman has spent $12,000. If we were to approve this anomaly, the max would still be $10,000. But again, my understanding is, and maybe Chris, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone who applied, anyone who got prior to August 1st, and with a homeowner replacing their own lateral or partial, there had to be a permit approved and issued. Is that correct? And we would know that. And would we know the cost of that work? Not necessarily. Okay. So, but only, so, that's what I'm saying. Anyone who wanted to, if we were to approve an ordinance for this, any paperwork presented to us for a reimbursement would have to include permitting. It would have to be permitted. Without that, I don't think it's reimbursable, those type of guidelines. So I suggest we just keep it simple and we can go from there.
Agreed.
Commissioner
Patel.
Patel,
Yes, go ahead.
I think we should know overall exposure, how much we are going to take on the responsibility of whatever dates we set up. Without knowing what the ultimate exposure is for the MDC, us setting the date is, in my opinion, not appropriate.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, this is some financial information that was presented at either the board meeting or maybe one of the BPW meetings. It assumes for replacement $10,000, and Bob can explain the chart more fully, but repairs $5,000. And just, so we have July of 23 last year where the full length of laterals are replaced at our cost. But a few years prior to that, we had approved the another program where basically the MDC would, the customer could pay the MDC back over time, and that also had a $10,000 cap. And based on those applications and the property owners leaned, and that also requires a full length repair. It has typically been, everyone I've seen has been under 10,000. So to the general question of what is a typical cost, that program is, we've had many applications and it's been under 10 so far.
Yes, John, Bob Barron, MDC. John asked me to speak to this slide that we created back in April for Bureau of Public Works. So John said correctly, the first slide, we could show you the second one as well. But the first slide is for full replacement only, because that's what was approved in July of 2023. We anticipate that top row is that this is going to cost us about $460,000 a year. When we approved that, no, full replacement. Yeah, the second slide is 5,000. So, and this is 10. So this is for the full replacement. At the time that this was approved, the district board approved an appropriation, right? We don't spend $1 unless the district board gives us permission to do so through an appropriation. So we have an appropriation to replace sewer laterals, full replacements on the north end and throughout the district for free, effective July 1st. Typically in my 2 decades in public sector finance, most of which in Connecticut, there's no talk of retroactive. When the funds become available, when you appropriate the funds, they're applied going forward. But the question was asked, is it fair to cut it off or to begin it at July 1st? What if we were to go back 6 months and call it the first of the year, the beginning of our fiscal year? Well, we anticipated, that's what the lower chart is. We anticipated that would cost an extra $310,000. If we go to January 1st, the first line of the lower chart, if we went to a full year back to July 1st of 2022, we anticipate that would cost us an additional $605,000 and so on. So we went all the way back to extending the effective date of the July 2023 ordinance back 42 months, and that would cost us, in addition to the $460,000 a year going forward, it costs us an additional $1.5 million. So if we could go to the second slide. A second question was asked of us. In July of 23, we said full repair only, and the commissioner was correct. Scott had said, the reason why we did full repair only is because we don't want to go and make a spot repair in the first 10 feet of the lateral in an old pipe, and then 2 years later, there's another leak in the last 10 feet of the lateral, and we have to go back and do it again. So that's why the appropriation in the ordinance back in July of 2023 was only for a full replacement. We want to do a full replacement and let that last as long as the useful life of the asset. However, we were asked, hey, go back and take a look at your permits, just like we did for the full replacement to get that first slide. What about a repair at 5,000, an average of 5,000? Take a look at your permit. Like David mentioned, we don't know exactly what the homeowners had paid, but we do know the number of permits. So let's estimate that a repair was $5,000. And so what would the cost be if we added repairs to the effective date of the full replacement? And that's an additional $500,000 going forward. You know, if we say we're going to do repairs and we do it for everybody going forward, that's another $545,000 a year. And then the chart is laid out just the same as the first slide, where if you extend it back 6 months all the way to 42 months, these are millions and millions of dollars worth of unfunded, currently unfunded programs or amendments to what's already been approved. What's been approved is full replacement as of July 1st, 2023 going forward. That ordinance has been approved and funding has been made available. All of these alternatives are currently unapproved and no funding has been found to extend the effective date of the full replacement, nor to add repairs to being reimbursed. So that's what these two slides are, and we're happy to email that to all of you, but it's also in the minutes of the April 10th, 2024 Bureau of Public Works agenda.
Question?
Thank you. Commissioner Patel?
You, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
who paid for north end replacement? Was it a program or did MDC come up with the money and they decided to do it?
I'm sorry.
What was the question again?
Paid for
Which program paid for replacement?
it's our money.
Pardon?
It's MDC's money.
MDC?
Yeah.
MDC funds?
Oh, the north end. Oh, the state pays part of that, we pay part of that.
State
Part of
provided
it,
the money.
part of it,
Both.
Right.
part of it.
It
Yep.
wasn't MDC's
Not for
decision.
this, not for this. State isn't paying any of this.
Pardon?
The state's not paying any of this lateral replacement. We are. This is a district, this isn't the north end of Hartford project. This is,
District-wide.
this is something different. This is district-wide.
State paid for replacement and therefore we decided that we will replace for everybody through our funding. Am I correct?
My understanding is the state, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, the state is paying part of the money for the North End Rehabilitation Program that involves a couple things, separation of combined laterals, installation of a single sanitary lateral and a single stormwater lateral, and then connecting to a storm pipe. That's what the state has contributed to, and that's the program that what is generically called the North End of Hartford program, but that's the program. This is a different program. This is where a lateral fails, whether it's in Hartford or in West Hartford or wherever it might be. A lateral fails, and people can participate in this program up to a certain amount of money. $10,000 is the max. There's a process for us to be engaged in determining whether the costs are reasonable, the timing, all that, inspections and all that stuff. But it's a different program.
Commissioner Curry?
Thank you. Bob, can we go back to slide 1?
Sure.
All right, I'm picking a number. I'm not picking an effective date that I would be in favor of or not in favor of, but on January of 22, you've got $900,000. So let's use the assumption that the max is 10,000. So you got 90,000 customers, even though we know based on the comments at public, the other meeting that some were $5,000, $6,000 a lateral. But do we have the ability with technology say we were to approve that effective date, rather than write 90 checks for $10,000 apiece, do we have the ability to give back that $10,000 per person overnight for not unlike amortization, but to spread it out over payback monthly in their bill over, say, a period of 10 years? So it would only cost us $90,000 a year versus $900,000.
My guess is that you can develop the program any way you want to provide relief to the customers. That's creative. I wouldn't have thought of it, but yeah, and you're absolutely right. What does the 460 tell us? Is going forward, we expect to do roughly 46 at 10,000. If we extend it 18 months, all the way back to January of 2022, your number, that 900,000, that would be, in addition to the 46 that we're going to have in the next year, we would be adding 90 more people that we could pay up to $10,000 for. You're absolutely right.
Okay. And my second question, probably for district council, that if the board as a whole were to take up dealing with the anomalies, like this woman who addressed us tonight, that I don't know how long it is, but let's say her lateral's at least a couple 100 feet, it could be a couple 100 yards, I don't know. But if we were to consider those anomalies, and if we were to consider and actually approve reimbursement, could there not be an agreement drafted that it's like one bite of the apple? I mean, you replace that 50 feet of line, but it's only a quarter of your line, and yes, here's your $10,000 reimbursement, but you don't get anything else if 50 feet or 1 foot breaks anywhere else in because you've already maxed out.
Chris Stone, District Council, you can, and to Bob's point, you can amend the ordinance however you'd like. And if you want to amend the ordinance to provide for a sign off from the property owner in the event they only have a partial repair that's being reimbursed, that whether, and I guess that'd apply whether it's a full or partial, but at least as to partial, they could sign off, provided in the ordinance, they sign off for them to say that that's their one bite of the apple. They did not get a full replacement, they chose to get a repair, and all we're reimbursing is the repair and nothing further, nothing more. And they could sign off on that, sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Avedisian, yes.
I guess I've got a question and a statement. Question is, reimbursing them, whoever gets it, by taking it off their bill. What does that do? Because they've already spent the money, so we're reimbursing them. It's no burden because we're giving them a check or giving something. Are you talking about for us from a standpoint of doing this, or the idea?
If I might just speak on that before we get too far into this. You're talking about reimbursement from a water bill, and this is a sewer project. So we've got to keep both sides of the house separate. So reimbursing out of the water is I think it's a non-starter, but that's my, I didn't want to say it. He made me say it.
Thank you.
Glad you did.
Thank you.
It's just a different animal. I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah,
really, it's just,
but it doesn't really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the chairman has a good idea. I think we know what the dollars are, or we
Have an idea.
an idea what dollars are. So maybe we should pick a year, write it up, and then let everybody else argue it out. We could be here all night.
That's the only way to go. I work better with something conceptual in front of me, rather than,
yeah, we'll just
leave
leave a blank date.
Exactly.
I mean, and the good thing is you have a blank slate. Basically, you can kind of write it any way you want with some ideas that we've had here today. So I guess,
If I may, Mr. Chair, Kelly asked me to mention just a couple of things for your consideration, is that some of the numbers we put in there were, like was previously mentioned, where people went out and had the repair done, asked us to pay for it, and they were paying us back in time. The total was about $110,000. They have payments remaining of about $91,000. So if we were to do something like this, that receivable that we show as income, that $91,000 would go away. And then we'd have to figure out how to reimburse them for the $19,000 that they've already paid us. That's one issue. And then I thought there was one other thing we wanted to mention. The administration of it. The more complicated you make the administration of it, the more burdensome it is for us. For example, if we say, oh, we're only going to do it once, and then the person sells the home and a new buyer comes in, well, then do we say, well, 30 years ago, we already paid for a repair, we're not going to do it for the new home? And then keeping track of who had a repair and who didn't for decades on end. I would just ask that you consider the administrative burden with whatever plan you feel is fair and effective. And the last thing is, don't forget, as our district council pointed out, this is a sewer expenditure, and so if you approve $5 million to go back in some sort of program, our member towns through ad valorem are going to pay $5 million for that. So I think it would be important to make sure that our member towns, or you as representatives of the member towns, feel that it's okay to increase our ad valorem to pay for a program to go back past what was already established in July of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? So I'll go back to my original motion. I'd like to make a motion that we send this item
Mr.
to
Chairman,
staff.
can you hear me? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is Commissioner Torres.
Yes.
Yes, I have a probably question and a comment to make.
Okay.
First of all, what was the original intent of the ordinance that went into effect of July of 2023? I believe that there were certain considerations that were discussed in committees to determine a starting date for a program and a designated budget item to pay for those lateral repairs. So a lot of thought went into this, and a starting date was established, and then a budget decision was made by the commissioners to fund this program. So are we talking about now digressing from the ordinance, first of all? And secondly, are we talking about situations where the cost is due to an oversight of the MDC or some other reason for the payments to be made? Those are some of my concerns, because I think that we need to be clear about what this ordinance that was passed by this body was intending to do, and all the ramifications that now would take effect if, in fact, we make this decision, which is not only a decision for one customer, but a decision that affects many customers and subsequently member towns that foot the bill.
Yeah, well, first, to answer your, Chris Stone, to answer your first question is yes, the concept would be a reworking, redraft amendment to the ordinance that was passed and effective in August of 2023. So that's the first answer. Secondly, there were some, I'm sure there were some budget considerations made back in the June, July timeframe when this ordinance was first considered. And those, as Bob Barron pointed out, those are taken care of prospectively and budgeted accordingly. Finally, I don't envy, on a personal note, I don't envy any of the commissioners in terms of what's being asked of them and what is a possible resolution for what won't be one customer. It may be several customers, and a query whether, in determining how far you go back, how far do you go back? Do you go back to 2023 or 1929? I mean, how far do you go back to make it fair? This was a program that was developed for a reason in 2023. You set the policy in 2023 and you made it prospective. That was your choice. If you want to change that, you're certainly able to do that. The question is how far back, and that's not an easy decision to make at all.
Commissioner Curry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Kerr, I think that was an excellent question, and I'm going to use some round numbers, so Bob may yell at me, but, you know, we looked at that 900,000, and if we were to, typically Hartford, and I've heard different numbers, but Hartford's share of the ad valorem is like 25%.
26, yeah.
Yeah, so that's like $225,000, and if we were to pay back those 90 customers, that means that Hartford's ad valorem would go up $22,500 a year, round numbers. So it kind of puts it in perspective, and that's why I think, you know, at some point we're going to, if the board agrees to any type of this, we're going to have to draw that line, and we have to be cautious.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions, discussions? Anyone? So I'll go back to my.
Well, you made your motion. Does the second?
No, he didn't finish.
I didn't finish the motion. That's okay, that's okay. So again, I'd like to make a motion that we send this item back to staff to develop an ordinance and bring it back to this committee for further discussion and conversation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Was that an?
No, that was in favor.
Okay.
That was an aye.
Abstentions? All right, motion carries. So this will go back to staff. They'll develop that ordinance and bring it back to us.
John, when's the next, is there a regularly scheduled government committee? Okay, so as soon as we get it done, I'd say 2 weeks, 3 weeks at most. We'll let you know, Mr. Chairman, then you
Okay.
can schedule a meeting.
That'd be fine. Thank you. Again, I know this has been going back and forth for quite some time, my understanding is. So I'd like to get this thing done or resolved sooner rather than later if we could.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, there's anyone from the public that wishes to make comments? Any comments?
Yes. Chairman, this is Judy Allen.
Yes, Judy, go ahead.
Okay. On May 1st in 2023, the district board passed a resolution to pass on to the Committee on Government recommendations that were submitted by the Internal Audit Committee. And part of that resolution was that the Committee on MDC Government shall develop an annual training and orientation of new and existing board members to provide such members with information relating to their specific authority under the district charter, ordinances and bylaws, and the operation of organization and governance of the Metropolitan District in general. So the May 6th meeting of the Committee on Government took this up. And that particular item, they referred to council to develop the training and have Chairman Bazzano review that, I think is how it went. So this is sort of vague to me. Was district council to develop the training and Chair Bazzano to review it, and then the training would go into effect with no further action required by this committee? I can understand that the whole committee wouldn't need to review all the details of any kind of training, but I would think that the committee would be advised that the training had been developed and how it would be implemented. As a customer of the MDC, I'm very concerned that commissioners have the information they need so that problems like that do not happen again. And I was wondering, as I was hearing people talk, the money from the legislature for the North End projects was money that I think residents had to apply for. You didn't just automatically get money. And I'm wondering if the MDC could do something similar, create a fund that customers could apply for, and then MDC could create some kind of parameters around that, and maybe, you go forward maybe 2 years, put some sort of cap on, how far you can go back in terms of applying for these funds. So that was my thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, yeah. And we'll look into that other issue that you mentioned earlier. Is there anyone else from the general public that wishes to make some comments? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to item number 8, which is the commissioner's request for future agenda items. Hearing none, and with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.